opening keynote speaker is Dr. DeWayne Hendrix. He's the founder and CEO of New Daylight. His talk today is entitled, Where Do We Go From Here? DeWayne Hendrix is an author, a retired senior executive leader in the federal government, and founder CEO of A New Daylight. DeWayne, a California native, began his career in public service in 1986 after earning a bachelor's degree in criminal justice administration. And then he served with pride and professionalism in the diverse urban and rural communities and cultures of New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Arizona, Washington, D.C., Maryland, Tennessee, New York, West Virginia, Arkansas, and Oregon. Diverse and widespread indeed. During his 28 years of public service, he became skilled in program activation, change and performance management, regulatory compliance, classroom instruction, and budget administration. He's been a member of the Senior Executive Service since 2018 and was the Chief Executive Officer of 3 facilities with teams of over 600 staff and an annual operating budget of over $80 million. Staff training, leadership development, and reentry has been DeWayne's professional passion throughout his career. And with over 15 years of senior executive experience in staff training and organizational development across the United States, DeWayne has achieved maximum results in implementing new programs and initiatives to build employee engagement, productivity, and retention. In 2019, he published his book, Who Are You? See It, Say It, Seize It, which was based on the Mentors for Life program he created in Memphis, Tennessee. Over 1,300 incarcerated persons, men and women, have completed the requirements of the program across 6 states. 11 program participants serving a life sentence have received executive clemency. DeWayne has served as the chairperson on a committee to help end the opioid crisis in the state of West Virginia, and he developed a family reunification center in Brooklyn, New York to help children of the incarcerated who remain connected to their parents and guardians through the parent-teacher conferences, Mother and Child Night of Bonding, and the Brooklyn Bridge Walk. During the initial outbreak of the coronavirus, COVID-19, DeWayne partnered with the Center for Disease Control and Prevention to conduct a peer-reviewed research study at a prison complex where he served as the chief executive officer in the state of Arkansas. DeWayne is a member of the board of directors at Planting Justice, a nonprofit organization based in Oakland, California, where he was raised. The purpose of that organization is to grow food, grow jobs, and grow community through food sovereignty, economic justice, and community healing. DeWayne's passion to greet each day with an attitude of gratitude begins with his relationship with his God, his wife, his children, reading and writing, improving his culinary skills, taking long drives, riding his spirit bike and his spin bike, and getting out for a run to gain the benefits of releasing endorphins. If you have questions for Dr. Hendrix, please send them to the speaker panel moderator. That would be, I think that we want that to be Neil Abramson, correct? Please send that to the speaker panel moderator, Neil Abramson, identified as #M Neil Abramson in the participant window. He'll collect them for the first speaker panel discussion. Okay, with no further ado, if I could please introduce our keynote speaker. DeWayne, hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. What a privilege to have you here, sir.
Thank you. I owe you a big time check for that introduction. Hopefully half of it is factual. But no, thank you to everyone, the leadership at Prisoner Partnerships, all the participants. I really appreciate the opportunity to share a few minutes to talk about our theme today, which is new energy, new thinking, and new action. Um, as Dave talked about, me being from Oakland, and I don't want to steal the thunder for our next presenter, but how I started in the reentry business was as a child, not necessarily of a parent who was incarcerated, but a sibling who was incarcerated. First time I went to a jail, I was 7 years old. I went to the North County Jail there in Alameda County, California, uh, to visit my brother who spent many years as a unfortunate drug user. And my other older brother, he spent nearly 20 years in Michigan Department of Corrections. So as a child, I saw the devastation that the toll that it took on my parents to have, children going in and out of prison. And actually, when I was growing up, I had no idea that I would actually even work in corrections because I actually wanted to be I wanted to go to college for computer science, and then I wanted to go into teaching, and I took a criminal justice class, and then I just kind of fell into this profession. But at the heart of it, I've always wanted to see people do better because as every time my brothers would come home, they made promises that they would do better. They'd come home, they'd be off the drugs and off the alcohol for a little bit, and then after a while, they could get back out in the streets and then end up back incarcerated. And so when I started my career as a correctional officer, my dream job was to be a case manager because I always felt like I wanted to be able to have a positive impact on those who were behind bars. And then just after moving across the country, I ended up becoming a warden. But enough about that. In terms of what I've seen from starting my career back in '96 to where we are now, it's kind of the same energy, but it's usually a small group of people in terms of who really wants to see people our country to be less because we're the most over incarcerated country in the world. Um, and I've seen this pendulum swing where when I first got into corrections, it was like three strikes law in California. Let's lock them up, throw away the key, let's get everybody behind bars. And then in 2008, we had the Second Chance Act, and here recently we had the First Step Act. Um, but when I think about new energy, when I think about trying to get people to re-enter, and for some people to enter society for the first time, because some folks who've been incarcerated were never really a part of society. They were gang affiliated, caught up in drugs, caught up in violence and different things of that nature, and never really had a foothold in society in a positive manner. So when I think of new energy, I think about what I call some of the pillars that we all need. We all need health. We need good health, access to health care. We need clean water, quality foods, quality education, mentor programming, uh, different things of that nature. And it all starts in the community. When people think of public safety, we think of the police. We think of, as long as I feel safe when I know the police are around and people aren't going to be doing anything. But in reality, public safety starts at home and it starts in our communities. And I believe that's where the new energy needs to start because um, if we don't start doing more things in our communities before these folks actually get incarcerated, we wouldn't need all the different things we're doing behind the fences to kind of recalibrate people or get people on the right path so when they come home, they won't come back to our facilities. So when I think of new thinking, again, on every level, because we're not going to get rid of prisons. I mean, we are human beings, people make mistakes, and folks are going to be incarcerated. But at the end of the day, prison shouldn't be a place where people uh, necessarily need to be fully rehabilitated because at the end of the day, folks should be able to take accountability for the mistakes they've made, and then have programs available to them that will allow them to get back on the right track, which, whatever led them to the behavior that led them to be incarcerated, whether it's anger management, whether it's fiscal, financial literacy, whether it's being a better parent, a better spouse. It should be more focused on that. When unfortunately, I've seen uh, individuals locked up that need almost every program that they needed to take, and it's like, how can a person shouldn't be behind bars to get their lives corrected fully. So, um, and I know I'm gonna have a different thought process from a lot of my contemporaries and folks in my profession, because they look at it as job security and different things of that nature. But at the end of the day, the new energy, the new thinking, and the new action has to be more three pronged: pre incarceration, incarceration, and post incarceration. Because ultimately, one of the things that I would always tell individuals when they would come for admission and orientation, I would tell them, look, use the time that you have in here right now to look at the things that you need to do to fix yourself and to reconnect with those who really care about you and who really mean well for you in your life moving forward. Because if you don't use this time wisely, you might as well don't even leave the facility. You might as well just stay here, because you're going to end up back here. And on the back end, I would meet with inmates before they left the facility, like that Friday before. I would pull all the guys in, or ladies, whichever facilities I was managing, and I would have a discussion with them before they would go to a halfway house or they would go back home. And I would tell them, look, you've done your time. So when I see you the next time, I don't want to see you behind the fence. I want to see you in the community. I want to see you in the church. I want to see you at a ball game. I want to see you at the grocery store. I want to see you at the gas station or at the barbershop or wherever. And I just want to hear how well things are going for you. That's what I want to hear. That's just speaking life to people. Just doing small things like that. And in Memphis, where I've retired, where I'm spending my time with my family, and I do see people at gas stations or in the barbershop or in the community. And a lot of times, because been around so many inmates, some of them I don't recognize right away. Guys walk up to me, give me a hug or handshake, and they'll be like, "Man, I remember you talking to me in the chow hall, or coming into one of the classrooms, or in the units, or I was, having a difficult time. I was in solitary confinement, and you said something positive." And those things, those little moments like that, uh, of course, I do appreciate the pension that I have gotten from working so many years in the government, but in reality, seeing people in the community when they're trying to do the right thing and they say, wow, you spoke life to me, and I really appreciated that. And that don't come from me being a great person. That comes from my own personal pain that I had to go through, watching my own brothers be incarcerated, because I held grudges against them, growing up in the inner city in Oakland, and not having them have my back when I was in the streets. I was bullied and pushed around and different things of that nature. And I remember being upset with them because they weren't there. But in reality, I think the journey that my creator has put me on was for this journey that I'm on, and that, hey, I had to go through that in order for me to go into a prison or a jail and look a person in the eye and say, hey, you're going to be held accountable for what you're doing, but you're better than what you have done or said or shown or whatever. Because at the end of the day, as long as you're still breathing, I had an elder in my family used to always say, as long as you're breathing, you still have a chance to make a difference, no matter what your past is. So that's, it's not necessarily new energy, but it is in the sense that we see despair, we see different political stances that are being taken. And I've, been in, working in corrections for so long, I've seen the philosophy of lock them up. I've seen the philosophy of let's do reentry. And then I saw the philosophy of let's build more prisons and let's get these private prisons filled and let's get our stock options up. And when you do that, then obviously someone else has to be failing in order for someone else to make money off people going to back and forth to prison. So, how do we restore hope and grant and humanity into this process? First thing is just see individuals as a person and not as their behavior is showing. Because I remember some of my colleagues, I had an inmate that came and got my face one day outside of the dining hall, and the guy had some mental health challenges, and I knew the inmate pretty well, and he was kind of moving around, talking crazy, and then this other staff member who had just got there, like he was ready to grab him and take him down and rough him up a little bit. And I'm like, no, this guy, I know this particular person. He's having a bad day. I'm giving him an opportunity to, voice his frustration about whatever the issue was at the institution at the time. And, some people are like, well, man, this guy's soft. He let inmates talk to him crazy. And it's like, no, he didn't enter my space to where I didn't feel comfortable enough to allow this person to talk to me. But I tried to get to know the individuals that I was working around, so that way we could have have communication. And inmates can have a bad day, and they can be frustrated about not getting their visits or not getting a higher pay at whatever job they're working, or their family member didn't come visit them, or maybe they didn't get a chance to go to a funeral of a family member because they were behind bars. And just being a human being, seeing people's humanity. Because I will tell you this is another thing I will tell inmates in admission and orientation. If you act like a person, you will be treated like a person. If you act like a human being, you will always be treated with humanity. But if you hit my fence and try to escape, then we're going to have to take care of that. Okay. So as long as you're acting like a human being, which you are, which you should be, you'll always be treated as such. But unfortunately, there are a large part of our society and a large part of staff that don't see individuals that are incarcerated as human beings. They don't see their humanity, but they see their issue or their issues. Now, and again, there's a reason why we do have prisons, because there are some very dangerous people out there who mean harm and who do harm. And that's just the reality of it. But 75 to 80% of the people behind bars aren't dangerous, and they're going to be back in our communities, and we need to do everything we can to make sure they get back. And even those who are violent, those who do mean other people harm, who have mental health challenges, or who are very serious about doing a lot of very bad things to people, we still have to treat them like humans, because there could be one thing that could trigger an event for them to start seeing their lives in a little bit in a different way. Uh, so when we think about wellness and mentorship behind bars, it isn't just for the incarcerated, but it's for the staff as well. I mean, I don't know if you guys noticed, the average lifespan for a correctional officer is only 59 and a half years. 59 and a half years. And the mandatory retirement age, if you want to work up to it, is 57. So I retired at 49 because I was like, I'm not just going to be sticking around here just to stick around. But most people retire between 55 and 57. And if the average lifespan is only 59, you're talking about 2 years after working 20 to 25 years of a career. And then you got 2 years to enjoy your life, possibly, depending on how you're living, because a lot of it is lifestyle. Most people, I'm not going to say most, I'll say a lot of people in this industry who work behind the fences, they have chronic substance abuse issues. They have multiple marriages and relationships and all that, and their finances are aren't well put together, and that does lead to not living a long time. And when you're talking about 59, and then the average lifespan for a person is between 74 and 78 years, you're cutting, 15, 16 years of your life off to do this work. So wellness is very important. And sometimes the people that are working in our industry are more broken than the people who are actually incarcerated, unfortunately. And so when you're talking about restoring hope in humanity, um, we can't forget about those people who are working behind the fences, because those things go hand in hand. And I can't tell you how many people that are incarcerated have come to me and said, how am I going to try to do better when I'm seeing half of your staff, they bring in drugs, they're lazy, they don't wear their uniform properly, they're not professional, they're not on time, they're not following up, so it's like you guys are the ones that are supposed to be showing us how to go about living life. But again, it's a difficult task, and not a lot of people, when people think of prisons, I mean, you think of, some of these old movies, Shawshank, and some of these other movies, The Green Mile, and some of these other movies we've seen through the years. But in reality, it's not as bad and as gory as it looks in terms of physical harm, but the emotional harm is it's almost like a horror movie in terms of the vicarious trauma and other things that we face. So again, we must, we're talking about new energy, new thinking, and new action. We have to be very inclusive in our programs and our processes in terms of the people that work there, because ultimately the staff have children, and a lot of times these folks they're away from their kids. They're not spending time with them. They're not picking them up from school. They're not going to ball games. They're not going to recitals and plays and different things of that nature. And then that you're trying to save these folks over here, but then you're not even doing what you're supposed to be doing with your own family. So I definitely want to make that point when it comes to, when we're talking about reimagining reentry and reclaiming the identity through new energy, new thinking, and new action as well. So in terms of programming and um, and different things of that nature of what actions that we can take. Um, I look at it as the same stuff that we learn as kids, just basic fundamentals, as being a good human being, looking at what your life is, that particular individual life has been, and what it needs to be to get them to where they need to go from here. Um, there are a lot of one of the things that now that I've retired the last couple of years and have done some work in the nonprofit space is just like on the inside, there's not a lot of collaboration. And I'm glad and I'm thankful to be a part of this conference, because I'm hoping that as we hear the speakers and all the different partnerships that you guys have, that we're actually collaborating and working together um, to create a holistic view of reentry in terms of, okay, and I'm sure you guys are all over the country. I'm not sure exactly where everybody's from, but I can tell you in Memphis, there's, let's say there's 50 different organizations, and maybe doing 35 different things. But one of the hardest things that I see in the community that I live in is there's not a lot of collaboration. There's more competition, and I know sometimes we're fighting for the same grant money and that kind of thing. But in reality, it hurts those individuals who really need the help, because you may do housing, someone else may do employment, someone else may do substance abuse treatment or whatever. And I just feel like the whatever databases that we're using, um, we just need to collaborate a lot more and a lot better, so that everyone's work, because it's everything, every component of reentry that each and every one of us are doing is important. But we also want to make sure that we're creating a whole person as they go through that process, because ultimately we want to get people from going back inside. And I'm telling you, with the time we're in right now, and that's funny. I hear this every time, whether it's 5 years ago, it's like, oh, this is the most critical time in this function that we're doing in this reentry. But I can tell you right now, um, there is behind the scenes, there is forces that are looking to get more and more people behind bars, because there are, here in Tennessee where I live, there were at least three different facilities in the Memphis area that were mothballed, closed, that were private, just a couple of years ago when I retired. And now these facilities are now being reopened. Okay. So, I've been trying to tell my family, anybody that I know, especially those in the inner cities, stay on your P's and Q's, stay focused, stay on guard, because any little thing can get you back behind those bars. And I worked in community corrections, and I could tell you countless times that I had to write memos for marshals to go pick up an inmate for something as basic as not coming back to the halfway house on time, or being disrespectful to one of the staff at the halfway house, or hanging out. They had a furlough and was 2 hours late. I mean, now, should that be a reason a person should be incarcerated again? No. But when your bosses and those above you are saying, hey, this is the initiative, this is a point of emphasis right now, then you have to, as a bureaucrat, you got to follow those rules. So, and again, that was another thing that I would talk to inmates about before they would leave. Just stay on your P's and Q's, because now that you're in the system, it's easy to stay in the system. So in terms of, my book, and I'm not trying to promote it or whatever, but when I created that program, Who Are You? See It, Say It, and Seize It. The thing about people being behind bars, and I've been around people from the inner city who grew up with absolutely nothing, and I've been around like high level politicians, stars, or whatever you want to call it. And when they put on that uniform, it changes you for the worse. And I'm not saying like you're totally a bad person, but it kills your confidence. Okay. And when I would tell people, you have to be able to see whatever it is that you want to see, whatever goals you're trying to set for your life. You have to say it, and then you have to go out and do the appropriate thing to get it. And that will never go out of style. And and like I said, I chose lifers to become facilitators in the program. And, half of them were like, I'm never going to try to help anybody else out. They going home. I'm not going home. I'm like, well, think about it like this. When you talk about new energy and new thinking, I told these guys, I said, look, what if one of these inmates that you mentor, their granddaughter or their son or whoever becomes a lawyer, and they end up being your attorney to help you fight your case? I mean, I always say sow seed in unlikely places, because when you do that, you get, you get results that you never thought you could get. And because of that, like I said, we had 11 lifers get clemency between FCI Memphis, MDC Brooklyn. I'm talking about male and female inmates. Different presidents that were able to, and I'm not saying it was because of our program, but it's just because of the energy that we were putting towards it, and going out and just saying, hey, what if this happens? What if you can do this? Things happen. I remember this one particular inmate from Memphis, the Memphis area. He had life, and he was an older gentleman, and he was like, man, I'm never going to take this class. I'm never going home. And I'm transferred to New York. And then he started seeing inmates leave that had life. And then he came back and took the course. And now he's home. He's been home for a few years now. So I say, whatever visions each and every one of you have for your organizations, for your staff, for your teams, no matter how crazy it sounds to other people. Invest in that, because ultimately that's the one thing that's going to help us change the trajectory of mass incarceration in this country. And and I applaud each and every one of you for the work you're doing, and the work that you're going to continue to do to make a difference.
DeWayne, thank you so much. It was so wonderful to meet you, to listen to you. And I hear your message for both compassion for everybody that's incarcerated, but also compassion for everybody that's working there and working with the incarcerated and everybody in the community. So I hear your message for compassion and I hear your message for collaboration. So wonderful to listen to you and be, to imagine that world a world where the whole prison system actually is filled, infused with compassion, and that there is collaboration nationwide, in fact, worldwide. The other thing, DeWayne, I'm really struck by is, people can be really brilliant, and you are brilliant, all right? And it's obvious, and I could call you Dr. Hendrix, right? Because you're a PhD. So it's obvious you're brilliant. But if no matter how brilliant people are, DeWayne, if they don't love, honor, and respect the people, their knowledge isn't worth very much, quite frankly. The great, great leaders of our world are the ones that have refused not to love, the ones that have just refused not to love. Mahatma Gandhi, Dr. King, what had them be so great is they refused not to love. So I appreciate in your leadership, I can hear like that in your leadership and you're retired now, whatever community roles you take on, in your executive leadership in the system, you refused not to love, honor, and respect all people. And that's what has leadership really be great. So it's a privilege to have you with us today. Thank you so much. Anything else you'd like to say before we move on?
No, I thank you for talking about love, and I'm because there's different types of love, but I think it's, again, it starts with just seeing people's humanity, um,
Hmm.
and seeing yourself in others, even if they don't have the same skill set or some of the same frailties that you have, and just, again, sowing seed in unlikely places. Uh, because we think about miracles, you think about, you know, stories we've heard, from our religions and our spirituality and that kind of thing. But I think every person that's on this uh, Zoom right now is a miracle. We're all a miracle. I know in business we always say you're an answer to a problem, because if there's no problems, if you ain't got nothing to solve or fix, then there's no need for you to be here. But I believe that every person that's on this Zoom call right now is a miracle, and it may not necessarily like you're going to walk on water or raise somebody from the dead, but you might save somebody's life. So is that not the same as raising somebody from the dead? If you know putting life and giving someone life and speaking life, or look at somebody in the eye and say you're wrong and hold somebody accountable, yet and still find a way to love on them despite whatever issues they may or may not be having. So
Beautiful, Dwayne. And I love what you say about seeing the whole person. A person's crime or sentence or period of incarceration is one, one aspect of their entire living and their existence. So when you say see the whole person, it's very important. And also, I appreciate, compassion. Dwayne, I've discovered over time that compassion is different than sympathy. I don't love sympathy because if I'm sympathetic, that means you must be pathetic. And I don't hear you talking about sympathy. I hear you talking about compassion, which is a deep understanding of what it takes the other person to live their life and be them, and an appreciation for that, and then a real stand that for their health, their well-being, a real stand for their success in life. It's really extraordinary. Listen to you. I'm moved by it. It's like that somebody that's been in the system as long as you have, and somebody that's, had the roles that you've had, you did not let your heart get closed. Yay for you. Awesome. You kept your heart open and still open, and it's inspiring. Great, Dwayne. Anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you. Thank
All
you
right, you're
guys.
getting lots of emojis there of expressing love and acknowledgement right back to you too. You know, may you continue to do your great work, Dwayne, wherever you go. May you continue. Really wonderful. And for all of us listening, right? Oh, well, that's we can live in Dwayne's example, right? Oh, we just saw an example of not being discouraged in any way, still being having a great vision, keeping a heart open, and standing for something extraordinary, standing for new thinking, new energy, and new action. That's a future. New thinking, new energy, new action. One last time, thank you, Dr. Hendrix. Great.